It's a staggering amount, 76 billion, communities saturated all over this country, although mostly rural areas of, places like West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, South Carolina. And what we found is that's exactly right. There's this sort of secret database that was maintained by the DEA. We were able to get this. We fought in court to get it. We've been trying to get it for 3 years. First through a Freedom of Information Act, and finally through court, through this big lawsuit that's going on in Cleveland at this time. And what it reveals is, we've all heard about Purdue and OxyContin, but what you can see is that there are many other companies, some we know, CVS, Walmart, Walgreens, and some we really haven't heard of before, that are all shipping, huge, massive amounts of pills to these communities and not reporting orders that seem suspicious.
Sari, I think that one of the most shocking things, I understand why the industry would fight this. Why was the government fighting this information from being released?
Well, that's obviously a very good question. What they said to us is that it could hurt possible criminal investigations that they were doing. So what happened is that the judge sort of lopped off several years of the data. So we don't have the last 5 years of data. And then recently he took off 2 more years. Originally, it was up to 2014, and we were going to hopefully fight for that. And then 2 more years were taken off, so it's 2006 to 2012, so a 7-year period. And like you said, at the height of the epidemic. So it's not the whole story, but it's a snapshot where we can see all of these companies that, of course, made huge profits, shipping massive amounts of oxycodone and hydrocodone, which are 2 of the most addictive opioids.
Meg, Sari alluded to some of the numbers and some of the companies. You do see Walgreens, Cardinal Health, AmerisourceBergen, CVS, and Walmart as big distributors. But at the very top of the list is a company called McKesson. They shipped more than 14 billion pills over that period of time, 2006 to 2012. What does information like this mean eventually for the stocks of these companies?
Well, so what everybody's looking for as to the stock impact here is an event that's coming up later this year, this multi-district litigation in Cleveland that Sari's story talked a lot about as well, where these companies potentially are working on a settlement with 2,000 different entities who are trying to get them to pay for the cost of the opioid crisis in their cities, counties, et cetera. And so what people are trying to figure out is who's going to be accountable for what. And when you see these big numbers, you do start to wonder, can you start to attribute dollar amounts or percentage amounts to these companies? So that's what's going to matter for the stock. And we should point out the companies have responded both in this fantastic Washington Post article and to us, basically saying the same thing. And across the board, if they responded to us, they pointed at the DEA and said, we were only doing what the DEA allowed us to do in terms of supplying up to their quota, or the DEA was looking at this data in real time. Why couldn't they be more proactive?
Well, that's dumb. Why couldn't they be more proactive with their own information? Nobody stopped me. It was okay to do this, so we went all the way to the very extents of the line. Sari, I think one of the things that shocked me, looking through the states that followed up, we've all been following Oklahoma and watching the headlines that are coming out of what they're doing in terms of attacking this and going after it with lawsuits. Oklahoma's not even in the top 5 states of where this played out. You've got places like West Virginia, Kentucky, and 3 other states that saw much more distributed in their own states. What is this going to mean?
Tennessee.
Right. In terms of the scope of what this is, what would you compare this to? What do you think it'll eventually look like? Something like the tobacco legislation?
Well, people have compared it to the tobacco litigation. This is much larger in scope. 2,000 cities and towns and tribal communities, and devastated communities. And what the lawyers in these cases, this now consolidated case in Cleveland, say is that the companies conspired, that this was a conspiracy to work together to all pour opioids into these communities. And what we've seen from this, of course, the result is a lot of death. 100,000 deaths in that time period that we wrote about, that 7-year time period, but 200,000 opioid deaths altogether. And then, that's the first wave of what becomes a heroin addiction problem when the government starts cracking down on opioids, and tremendous numbers of heroin deaths. And then, of course, what we've written about, the third wave, which is fentanyl, which has led to more than 67,000 deaths between 2013 and 2017.